Hello, welcome to the latest edition of the ALS Association Greater Philadelphia Chapter Podcast. I'm Tony Heil, your host and Director of Communications and Public Policy here at the Greater Philadelphia Chapter. Right now, we are in the midst of May 2017, and May is ALS Awareness Month. There are a lot of activities happening in May here in our chapter area, from the Phillies Festival, which by the time this is up will already have passed, a walk to defeat ALS in Seaside, getting ready for a bike ride, and Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C., and in Harrisburg, and in Trenton, and New Jersey. And then there's things that happen all over the country. And then, as you'll hear in this podcast today, there's some events that happen all over the planet that get in touch with this chapter. And I'm not kidding. Today we are talking with George Pagano, who is a lot younger than me. It makes me feel lazy, as we just discussed. And he is part of the Cranial Quest. And he told me about 3,000 miles or so, but I think it's probably closer to 11,000 or something, all to raise money for ALS research and patient care in honor and memory of his grandfather. He is here today with his mother, Mary Emily, who it was her father that had ALS. So they're going to talk about their stories, what it's like rowing in the open water all that time, and how they raise money and awareness in that time. If you want to get involved in your own event, you don't have to row in any ocean. You don't have to go to any other country. You can stay right here. Go to alsphiladelphia.org. You can email Taylor, Taylor, at alsphiladelphia.org to set up a community partner event. And you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, even Snapchat now, which we barely use, but you still follow us all on those at ALS Philadelphia. So, with that out of the way, George and Mary Emily, thanks for coming into the office to talk on our podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
So, George, this was your thing.
Right.
You've rowed before.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and what led to you taking this quest. And forgive me if I interrupt to ask some questions because I'm going to be really confused of why anyone would do it.
No, it's okay. So I went to the Hafford School for high school, and that's where my love of rowing sort of started. I rowed all 4 years and was a co-captain my senior year. Then I decided to go to the University of Nebraska, and they have a club team there, which is a shocker to a lot of people. But I was able to row another 4 years there, and it was at Nebraska where this idea of rowing across the Atlantic sort of formed when some of my teammates showed me a video of 4 guys from the UK that did this Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. And it was like a 40-minute YouTube video, and I watched it when I was a freshman, and then sort of just watched it occasionally throughout my first 3 years. And then junior year, I sort of decided, I would really like this to become reality, and sort of tried to find someone that I thought could row with me, because I did not want to do this race by myself.
No, and your mom's here, and I can only imagine my mom not letting me row by myself because she would hit me in the head.
Yeah. But so eventually I found Caitlin Miller, who was on the rowing team at Nebraska, and I sort of had to lobby to get her to watch the video a couple times, and then she sort of got on board. She's very adventurous and outdoorsy, so it was definitely a good combination as far as a team. And then we sort of took more steps to figure out more about this race, what it would take. We actually got to talk with one of the rowers from the original video that I watched, and sort of learned what we would need to do in order to make this happen. And then we learned that and talked with our parents, and it's kept snowballing, and eventually turned out to happen.
So what year did you end up doing the challenge?
So it was December of 2015. So I had graduated from Nebraska because I wanted to make sure I got done school before I did this. So I graduated in August of 2015, and then we just sort of kept training because we'd been training for a while for this. And then December of 2015 is when we left the Canary Islands, and we arrived in Antigua in February of 2016.
And so that's crossing the Atlantic right there.
Yeah, it's a sort of a northern Atlantic route, pretty similar to what Christopher Columbus did.
Yeah, whatever.
And he had sails. But yeah, so and with this race, it is a race. So there were 25 other boats that we were competing against, mostly from the UK, and there were people that did it by themselves, other pairs like our boat, and then 4-person teams. And so the fastest boat crossed in, I think, 37 days, and the last boat made it in, I think, a little over 80 days. But every boat made it, which was a achievement for this race. No other previous race had all boats finish. So we were a pretty prepared fleet in general.
Well, that must have been daunting to you, knowing that no other race, Marianne, had everyone finished. Like, that would seem like something where my kid was doing it, I'd be like, I want to make sure everyone actually finishes this thing.
Right. And so when George told me, I was sitting at the kitchen table, and he said, I have something to tell you. And I thought, oh, what is this something? And he said, I want to do this race in honor of Grandpa. And because each of these teams race for a cause,
mm-hmm.
whether it's cancer, in this case ALS, and so forth. So he said, I want you to look at a video. So I looked at the video, and I looked at it several times because I couldn't believe what I was looking at. These boats are 25 foot long and 6 feet wide. They're not cruise ships. They're not motorized. It's just oars. And so I'm thinking, there's sharks out there. There's big waves out there.
Yeah.
How's he ever going to do this? And so the more I learned about ocean rowing, the more I was feeling a little bit better. But it's a very well organized, and I think comes a moment when someone's so convicted in terms of what they want to do that you have to basically support them. And the one woman who actually made the boat was an ocean rower, and she said it's important for family, friends, and community to get behind him.
Yeah.
To be successful.
Yeah, because it's not just about the money raised, which is great, but you need to know, George, that when you're doing this, because it gets tiring and lonely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That people are rallying behind you.
Absolutely, and we definitely felt the support not only from Delaware County, where we're from, and media specifically, but also even Nebraska. We had a lot of people donate money because we also had to raise money for costs because this boat we bought brand new, and it was a design that we had to get approved because it had never been used in this specific race before. There's entry fees to this race, and then just all the equipment like food and the medical equipment. So the costs definitely add up, and it's definitely, I'm very thankful for the support that we got through the community, my parents. We needed everybody. It was a team effort, not just me and Caitlin. It was definitely more than just us two that made this happen.
And it's something outrageous like this. You need to call attention to something like ALS, because basically he's using muscles that an ALS patient will never be able to use.
Right.
So every blade that goes in that water is a pull for a patient. So I think it was impressive, and he took my father's dog tags with him because
mm-hmm.
he was in the Navy, and the physicians felt that this was definitely linked to his service in the military during World War II. So with those lucky Navy tags and his love for rowing, he blended those two into doing the ultimate. and that is to row for ALS.
Well, doing a water thing like that, doing rowing kind of fits in with the Navy. Obviously, the Navy doesn't necessarily row across the Atlantic Ocean, but it is a really good thing, even without ALS, that Navy connection when you're going grandfather.
Definitely.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And so I was writing down about you being in Nebraska. So I lived in Council Bluffs, Iowa for a hot minute.
Yeah.
So was it right there at the river?
It's so we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we rode at a
it's not that far from there.
man-made lake, Branched Oak Lake. But I have rode in Omaha at Carter Lake.
Okay.
Yeah. But those are the only two bodies of water in Nebraska that I rode in.
Because there is a river there, right?
Yeah, there's the Platte River.
Right.
Yeah.
Because lake rowing, I would assume, would be a lot different than river rowing and obviously ocean. Like, did you test in different things to get prepared for the waves?
Well, that's a great question because
thank you.
Before you are cleared to take off in this race, you have to log a specific amount of hours on the ocean,
right?
Both just in general, but also specifically at nighttime.
Mm.
And we had to do all that while we were in La Gomera in the Canary Islands. And that's not too unusual, but it was that's why we also have to get to the Canaries 2 weeks before to prep the boat and to get that practice time, which was, it was definitely fun, and it made every step, from November through December of 2015, every step that we took made it feel more real and real and real. And then obviously race day came, and then it was for real.
Yeah, I was here in our area when we were hearing about it, and we're like, that doesn't make it. Why would someone do that?
Right.
Because, I mean, I don't row.
Right.
I do the rowing machine at the gym. But
yeah.
It's a bit different.
It is a bit different, and it's definitely different than rowing on a lake, rowing on a river. I mean, out in Nebraska with the wind, it definitely gets choppy, but not even close, obviously, to the ocean. So it was definitely something to get used to in the first, week or two of the actual race, is getting used to just the power of the ocean and sort of what life would be like for the next 58 days.
So you're on the boat for 58 days. How quickly does it, because you don't see the other boats most of the time, right? Everyone's kind of far away.
We didn't see any other competitor.
I mean, you might have maybe like at the end or at the beginning, but
right.
So you're in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. Like, how isolating is that feeling?
It is very very difficult initially to get used to, because one, I can't even imagine what it would be like for a solo rower. At least I had Caitlin to talk with, and we had a joke book, so I could read joke books or jokes, and at least sort of have some sort of sanity. But it is very different. You don't see anything. You're also focused just on rowing. So we would do 3-hour shifts, and you sort of just listen to music and sing if you want, and sort of just kind of daydream, and that passes the time. And then you get to go into the cabin and rest and eat, and then you do it all over again 3 hours later. So, but that actually, with that schedule, it actually makes things simpler, because you sort of, everything's the same for a long period of time. And at least for myself, that I don't know, I like that sort of easy schedule. It's nothing changes that much.
Right, you just called it an easy schedule, and I just called it 58 days of rowing across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people are listening to this and like, what the heck are they doing? So how much preparation do you need to have the materials ready? You had to have all the food for 50,
right.
You can't under budget. You don't want to over budget, because then it's a lot of stuff to take.
Right. So the boat The boat was probably like a year in the making that we had sort of got the boat started to build. And so as far as training, physical training, we probably did a year as well. We were, Caitlin was the president of the club at Nebraska, and I was the vice president of the club. We were also the coaches for the club. So we would coach our teams, and then after that practice, we would have our own ocean rowing practice that would last 2 hours or so, which we would do the indoor rower for about 2 hours. And then on other days, we would do, weight training and do, squats and bench press and leg press and different lifts for about 2 hours. And the other thing besides the physical training is we had to go to the UK to do sort of ocean rowing sort of training classes in sea navigation, first aid at sea. So things that not the typical person would know. And so that was a lot of learning as well, because I'm not a sailor by any means, so I had to learn sort of the lingo that you use for the radio in case you get in contact with another vessel. But that was fun because we got to meet other competitors and sort of form bonds early on, because it's definitely a close bond between all the members of the fleet. Even though it's a race, we still want everybody to do well.
Yeah, that seemed like, from what I had read on the website, from what we had talked about previously, that while it's a competition, I mean, you it's not like you're in NASCAR, and not that they're not bad people, but like pushing people aside to
right.
You guys just want everyone to succeed.
No, and there are teams that set out to win the race and set
records.
Records for.
I mean, you would have loved to have won,
right?
Who
of
wouldn't?
Course,
but there's no monetary.
Right, there's no prize money.
They give you a party, a cake?
Well, every team that gets into Antigua gets some sort of, welcoming. There was about probably 200 people at the dock that we arrived at. Obviously, we thought it was just going to be maybe 8 to 10 people, just our family members that would be there. But there were tons of locals that get into it for every single boat that comes in, and they're cheering, they're ringing cowbells, they're setting off flares, and also when we get into the harbor, there's all these massive sailboats and yachts that are blasting their horns, playing Eye of the Tiger, and just it was incredible to just come into the harbor.
And so that makes you realize they have to know when you're going to be there.
Yes.
So it's not like they're just waiting around, like, when's George going to get here?
Right.
Or the other people. So you keep in contact very regularly with where I am, and you know where you are?
Yes, we do. So
what are the landmarks? Well, there's water here, and there's a little bit more water there.
Yeah.
And a whale.
Well,
did you see any whales?
We did see whales.
That would be worth it to me. I love whales.
Yes. There was we saw maybe 2 or 3, and they stayed around the boat for probably 9 hours, and just sort of maybe were within 10 feet or so, which is pretty close for us. And we got to see different schools of fish.
It sounds pretty close to me. This whole thing sounds terrifying.
Yeah. And then there was a shark. The evening before we got in, there was a shark that followed the boat. But it was, so each boat has it's called a yellow brick. So it sort of is a tracking device on each boat. So that's how people can know what place we're in and our position.
And do you get updates on where, Tony Heil is 2 days ahead of you?
So,
I mean, come on.
Yeah, so we actually had two what am I trying to say, devices. So we had a satellite phone, so we could text other boats if we had their number, and so then they could tell us where they were and how far they had left to go. And then we had a InReach, which allowed us to even post Facebook posts from the Atlantic. But the yellow brick allows all our supporters to go on the Talisker website, see where we are, see how fast we're going. I think it even gives an estimated time of arrival to Antigua.
Well, that's good because if you guys were at Antigua,
many
you guys were going to go and hang out there for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right?
Right. But our friends, our family members, multiple times a day, we found ourselves on the yellow brick to see where he was, because it will track your coordinates. You will know exactly through GPS and the satellite. It tells you exactly where he's at. So that is comforting.
Yeah.
If we didn't have that, we would be isolated ourselves. So that was very helpful to have that. Plus, Talisker was very, very good towards the end of the race. They had an estimated time of arrival because it is a small island. So families want to get down there, and just the logistics of getting there, getting a place to stay. But it was unbelievable to see this harbor and the people that came out to witness something as extraordinary as this. And there was a military crew, amputees, that had done this. And I thought to myself, if they can do this, George can do this as well, because the stamina, the assurance, I think is just infects each of the crews. They do bond, and it was memorable.
I know that you can't control what he's going to do, but it helps you be okay with it when knowing the confidence you have in him as a rower, as a person. You have to know that he's got the mental toughness, because it takes that's probably the mental toughness is probably more than the physical toughness.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, and so you can train your body for this, like, if you stick to a good, sort of regimen, you'll be ready for this. But the mental aspect is something you just can't prepare for. Mm-hmm. You can't prepare for what it feels like when you're rowing at nighttime and there's, it's cloudy, so the moon isn't out and the stars aren't visible. So your depth perception, you just don't know really what is up and what is down. I mean, you have your headlamp on that allows you to see your feet, but it's sort of tough to sort of, mentally, it's just, you can't see anything, you just see blackness. It's very difficult to deal with at that time. Then just sort of the overall toll of it. There was times where we weren't making the mileage per shift that we really wanted to, or that the conditions sort of said we should be. Probably the last 600 miles were the toughest. We just felt like we were rowing through mud. We weren't getting the miles, and at that point, you can almost taste, the burger and French fries and Coke that you're going to get in Antigua, and you want it so badly, but you're not getting those miles that you've been typically getting, and that's frustrating.
If you want a burger and fries, I'll get you a burger and fries.
Well, that's exactly what I had when I got off.
I'm not saying Antigua. I would love to go there, but I don't know that they're known for their burgers and fries.
No, but at that point, anything was going to be good. Even though our food was very good on board.
Was it food that you got, or did they recommend what to bring?
Well, it's
because you get to get the portion size right.
Right. So we were able to have, we had 5,500 to 6,000 calories a day. Mm-hmm. And so we took these.
Right, because you need more than a regular person would need.
Absolutely.
So in addition to needing a lot of food, you need to have more than
because we're burning constantly.
Yeah.
We have these sort of backpacker hiking sort of freeze-dried food in these pouches that we hydrate. And it ranged from like lasagna to beef stew to macaroni and cheese. It was very good. I had never had it before, but it was extremely good. And so those were our main meals. So we would have 3 of those a day, and then at any whenever you're rowing, you occasionally take a break and eat something. So it would be Cheez-Its. It would be, peanut butter crackers. It would be Hershey bars. Really, the snacks sort of were up to you, up to each boat what they wanted, but you're really just trying to put any type of food into you so you can get some energy.
And some of those things are from back home.
Correct. Yeah. So we actually packed the boat before we shipped it over. So we put all of our food in the boat. That way we didn't have to repack it when we got to the Canaries. So yeah, we went to Costco and got a couple shopping carts and just put all the Cheez-Its and Oreos and candy that we really wanted, because we would be eating it constantly.
What can't you get at Costco?
Exactly.
I love Costco.
It's great. It is really good.
My wife goes there. Suddenly we have a lot of food for the kids that end up eating. And then I eat the 6,000 calories and I don't go rowing. And that's why I'm in this situation. So you have to prepare for the mental toughness of being... And it's a good thing you knew your partner, Caitlin, and that she was good, because I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my friends. But I can only imagine how irritated we would get with each other. Like, you guys...
There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we had been friends for a couple of years before this race, and we had just really gotten along. And I think what helps too is that we're both pretty easygoing people. We really don't get upset too easily, and that's really key for this, because little things like getting splashed by a wave can tick you off, and that's gonna happen, and the sun just...
If you're gonna be afraid of getting splashed by a wave,
right.
don't do a rowing competition.
Don't do this. But I think just our personalities just really were good for this, and we never fought, which is a good thing compared to other teams where, unfortunately, with more people, sometimes things do get a little tense, and there is some fighting. And unfortunately, for some teams, they've sort of drifted apart after this race.
It's like every VH1 Behind the Music. The band all breaks up, and eventually they come back together for a reunion tour.
Yep.
During this race, too, we're missing Christmas. We're
right.
missing New Year's. So one of the things that, before he left, we had a farewell party. And so we had this book, and we asked people to write down words of encouragement, a joke, a quote, so that they could read, like, each day something funny or something, a puzzle. And then we did Christmas stockings, and they took Christmas hats, Santa hats, and things like that, because for that one day, you need to do something other than just row. Yeah. And then you hit the hurricane or the so that was a real test of.
We're like a half hour into like, oh, then there was a hurricane. Like you gotta bury the lead.
Yeah. Well, So there was a hurricane that eventually turned into a hurricane. At the time, it was a tropical storm.
Oh well, that's no big deal.
But what the interesting part is that they specifically start this race in December because it's not hurricane season.
I was going to ask because I didn't know if it was weather.
Right. So this hurricane, it was the first one in January in the Atlantic since 1938. So it sort of it was our luck. But we were informed by our boat builder, who we were in constant contact with. She really was a big part of this because she told us how far north we should go, how far south we should go, our positioning, if it looked good.
And what's her name, so we can give her thanks on the podcast?
Sonia Bohmstein.
Uh-huh.
She's the company that the boat building is Spindrift. That
Great.
was the.
Well, thank you to them.
Yeah. And
we couldn't have done it without her.
Right.
She's a great friend, but she knows her rowing, and she knows this is the first American-made boat that entered a very British race.
I remember.
Yeah.
Well,
and
take it to them.
Exactly.
Leave it to a woman to.
And that's why we named it Washington's Crossing, sort of a little dig at them.
Yeah.
But and so with the storm, with the tropical storm, we were informed by Sonia, and we sort of just had to. Once the conditions sort of pointed to we can't row anymore, we put out what's called a pair anchor, which is like a giant pillowcase with line, and it stabilizes our position. So it puts us perpendicular to the waves.
Mm-hmm.
That way we don't get broadsided and potentially capsized. Even though these boats are self-righting, we obviously don't want to do that. And so we were in the cabins for three days, just waiting it out until the conditions improved, which it's, again, sort of to the mental aspect of it. It's obviously frustrating to not be able to get any progress, but if you make it into a positive, that we were able to get more rest than we were accustomed to. So we were able to sleep a little longer than just 3 hours and have to get back onto the oars. So that's how I looked at it. And the boat was able to stay in the same position relatively, only get blown back maybe 3 miles, which is great in comparison to other teams that got blown back maybe 30 to 40, which is, close to a day's worth. So we were, pretty happy about that. And
plus, it affected all the teams.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why we need to take global warming seriously. There's going to be hurricanes that are going to affect.
I know.
The whiskey challenge.
I know. And this year they didn't have one, so you just never know.
Right. So do you get whiskey at the end?
You do.
Okay, because that seems like you should at least get...
You get whiskey at the end. They actually give you the small little bottles before the race.
You really shouldn't drink a whole lot before you're rowing.
No, we didn't with those, but it was kind of cool just to have just a sort of nice little reminder. But we did have sort of fun things to eat and drink at certain milestones. So halfway through, we had it was just like a lemon soda from the Canary Islands that was just different from we had been just drinking water. So something that had some sugar, some taste to it. The lemon was really refreshing. It was sort of a nice little boost. And then we had these sort of covered cookies with covered chocolate cookies, which were amazing as well. Even though we had all the snacks that we really wanted, just that little difference sort of made us work harder for the next milestone, which would probably been, like 1,000 miles to go or 500 miles to go. And then once we got under 500, we were really anticipating getting in and getting excited to see our families.
Yeah, like the stars, you commented on how beautiful they were and how the moon just looked like a giant light bulb.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the clarity was, we don't get that around the cities, obviously, but the beauty of the ocean as in all aspects, it sounded like it was quite a transatlantic crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I remember I went on a cruise, but even on a cruise, there's light, so you see some of the stars. But
right.
That was kind of disappointing. It was cloudy when I was on the cruise, I think, a little bit. And I remember going to Cape Cod, I think, and that was when it was the best view of the stars ever. But even then, it's not as good as being in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Did you take any picture? Could you take any pictures?
We did, but then every team got a GoPro, and so we did take pictures. But when we reviewed them after taking them, the camera's just not. It's a great camera and does a lot of great things, but it's just not good enough.
Right.
To capture all the stars, and the moon just doesn't look like what we were seeing.
Yeah.
And like my mom said, the moon was like a giant spotlight, is what I like to say. So at nighttime, it was nighttime eventually turned into my favorite time of rowing, as long as the moon was out, because you can clearly see everything. You can see the water, you can see all the stars. And it's a lot cooler, obviously, than during the day. So we're not getting, torched by the sun.
Oh, yeah. I think it was cooler because of that, but, like, it's cool as in neat. But, yeah, you're right. It's cooler.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference because you're going to battle the heat.
Yeah. And
there's no shade.
That comes into play even when you're not rowing and you're in the cabin. So you have to keep the hatch door closed because our electronics are in there with our GPS and everything. So we don't want it to get that wet. So that cabin is basically like an oven in the daytime because it's just getting hit with the sunlight, and that's just, that cabin's just getting hotter and hotter. And that was one of the tough parts, is it's just you immediately start sweating, and so you eat really quickly and then try to go to sleep right after that, because if you don't, you won't be able to go to sleep. You'll just start sweating and be miserable.
But you learned those things. There was a lot of trial and error, I assume.
Yeah.
Like, we better row at this time, or...
Well, we rowed 24/7.
Right, but I mean, we better do it like this. We better, like, wear this or eat this time. Like,
Yes.
So you get better at it as you get going.
Definitely. I mean, there's no real, like, I don't know, like, blueprint. It's sort of, and that's what makes it nice, is that every team figures things out and does something their own way. Late into the row, probably the last 2 weeks, I learned that I should wear a t-shirt, because I hadn't been wearing a t-shirt. I should wear a t-shirt and squirt water on my back, because the shirt would retain the water longer than my skin would.
Right.
Because that would just evaporate. So I would stay cooler longer. So that's something that I'll remember for next time, because I do want to row some ocean again eventually.
Yeah, me too. So, but, you were... one thing that's interesting to me is how many aspects of this you're talking about: the isolation, the having to adapt, and it reminds me, because you're doing this for ALS, about the. So was that in your mind? Obviously, your grandfather passed away years before, and you were young.
Right.
You said you were 11 years old when he passed away. But
yeah.
You had studied about ALS. You knew what you were doing this for. Did that come into mind? Like, oh, this is, even after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think. What I really like in those tough times of with the sun and the days or the nights with no moon or anything, I tried to remember what I was doing this for. I was doing it in memory of my grandfather, and I was doing it for people that currently have ALS, and the fact that I'm so lucky to be doing this adventure and this journey. And I'm doing it for them. This wasn't something personal for me, because I'm trying to make some sort of difference in raising funds, and it's not. I knew the money that we did raise for the charity, it wouldn't be, so significant that it would completely. End things as far as the disease and finding a cure, but I knew that it would get us a tick closer to that, and putting us in a better position to eventually find a cure, which is a good thing. If you're in a better position than you were previously, I'll take that.
Well, and we're recording this on May 9th, and we just had the FDA approval of a new drug a few days ago.
I saw that, yeah.
And obviously it wasn't like, well, we need someone to row across the Atlantic and then we're going to do it.
Exactly.
But every bit helps.
Exactly.
And that was the first drug in 22 years.
Yeah.
The efforts of people who do a walk to defeat ALS, a bike ride, or even something like it all adds up together.
Absolutely.
And everyone doing the way they want to do.
And I mean, yeah, I have a ton of respect for everybody that does the walks and the ice bucket challenge. Before I did the row, that was great, because that got a ton of money. And I think another big reason why I did this race was I knew it was sort of out of the box and just sort of hard to comprehend for a lot of people, but I wanted to make sure that something crazy could potentially bring awareness to ALS, because I think sometimes it gets forgotten a little bit. I mean, Lou Gehrig, it was, I think, 1939 that he died of it, and, unfortunately, we're still sort of at the same stage where we don't have an answer for the disease.
We just got a drug last week,
I
man. Give us a little bit.
I know.
That's exciting.
But you're right. Like, you want to...
exciting.
And I've heard this so many times, like, it's been so long. We have a picture of Lou Gehrig behind you. No one can see it because it's an audio podcast, but it is a reminder of how long that time's been. And you were on a boat for a long. It kind of puts into the fact the length of this, and I think a lot of our patient families would appreciate you putting in that physical challenge effort.
Right.
and taking that back. So, what was the response like back home? I know, obviously, how much money did you raise?
We raised a total of $50,000, but we raised for the charity a little over $10,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And especially because, like you said, you have to raise a lot of money to do the thing. So
Yeah.
to raise money on top of that to make this successful is really impressive.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the reception back home was amazing. I think it was the same day that I got in, because it was around 10:30 in the morning. Within probably 2 hours, I was on the phone with the Delco Times, and then a couple papers in Nebraska, the Omaha World Herald, and the Lincoln Journal-Star, and then some other papers in our area in Delaware County. But the reception was great. I mean, I went back to my grade school, and Holy Child Academy, and that's where I gave my first sort of post-row presentation, because they had been very supportive of me, and sort of I obviously love talking about it, so I thought it'd be great to talk to the kids there, because I mean, it's sort of my message is, if you have something that you really want to do and you work for it, and it can happen.
Yeah, and that's something I think is a good, really close here, is from the beginning you talked about this, you seem like a very goal-oriented person. That's how you were able to be successful with high school and college rowing, and then your partner Caitlin also very goal-oriented. Is that the kind of the message you want to get out there to people, whether it's for rowing, for ALS, or anything else? Talking to those young people.
Yeah, I mean,
you set your mind to it and plan it.
Exactly.
Not to say I want to take over Idaho
right
as my own principality.
Right.
I have a goal and this is what I'm going to do.
Exactly. And like I said before, it was really up to us if we put in the effort and the time. And when I mean us, I mean, it was a full team effort by our parents and by the community, which we were able to, thankfully get support from. But if you put in the time and effort, you'll be able to achieve it. That's what I believe in. And, there was no doubt in my mind that we would make it across. We were confident in each of ourselves. I was confident in Caitlin as a partner. I was confident in our boat. Our boat performed excellently. We never capsized ever, so we were never in sort of a state of fear. None of our electronics failed us or got wet. We really had a great crossing. I mean, the hurricane it sounds scary, but when it was occurring with the conditions what they were, we were confident in our boat, and so I was never scared that we were going to capsize. So having that confidence, I think, really allows you to achieve your goal.
And now your next goal is to do the Pacific.
Potentially. First goal is I'm going to law school in the fall, so that's my next challenge.
Where are you going?
It's between Drexel and Villanova.
Well, I'm sure you'll be successful either
Thank
place.
You.
If you can row across the Atlantic, you can tackle either of those law schools. And I just said tickle either of those law schools, but you can do that too, I guess. But they would probably not feel it. Well, and again, before I finish here, how many people approximately were a part of that team that made you a success?
Ooh, I would say, let's see, 20.
Oh, you mean to get you
to get across 20
yeah,
people? I'd say we had our families,
advisors,
and we had special advisors that helped us with fundraising, like giving us ideas for fundraising events. Sonia obviously was on our advisory board because she, got the boat ready and helped us get us through the race. I mean, she was in constant contact with us, and we had a really good course that we took, and
we had gone through a nonprofit, because one of the things in fundraising is people want to give, but there's a positive side if you can go through a 501c3, so they can get that tax. Learning all those type of things so that he could achieve and raise the money. I mean, he's very humble, but the University of Nebraska had him out for homecoming. 90,000 people got to hear what he did.
Wow.
So that's 90,000 people that got to hear about ALS. So it's those type of things that
I'm hoping a few hundred people listen to this podcast.
but that's the thing,
Yeah.
The more you get, because this is like out over the top, it draws attention, and that's what we wanted. It draws attention right to ALS.
Yeah.
Because this was like a crazy way of doing it, but it was successful.
Well,
So, yes, it's personal, but it everything that he probably felt going across, whether it's hands aching, muscles aching, is exactly what an ALS, person, isolation, not being able to do everything that they want to do.
right.
And so he probably, could connect very easily. He was rowing from them.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Well, and it clearly shows, and I don't know that other people could be as humble about doing it. Maybe doing it is humbling.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
maybe you were really cocky before this, and now you're really nice and humble. I don't know.
Well, I think the thing is that it was a 2.5 year prior to the event of planning and training, and obviously want to have that confidence of saying that we're rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, and because when you pitch it to people for fundraising, you want to seem confident and that you're not going to be you're not going to fall short of your goal. And after doing it, it just sort of felt like, well, we've been saying it for a while, and the ocean definitely makes you humble, but we had almost set it into reality that it would happen.
And seeing the boat, I think also, I remember my aunt saying they were worried about my mother because my mother, who was 80-some years old, called them and saying, George is going to row across the Atlantic. And they thought, oh, their sister has really lost it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case at all. It was but it was just, no one hears about that in North America. And there are some Americans that have done it since then, but I'm very proud of them, and I think it's something my father would have really, would have been pleased. There was always that loving relationship, and so it was, needless to say, emotional that day.
Well, for anyone that's listening, you can learn more about the Cranial Quest, see some pictures, learn about whether they did it, and follow along, see more about George at www.thecranialquest.com. There's a lot of great information on there. It's a really good website, and you can see all the people that were involved, the advisory board. There's Mary Emily right on top, and there's Sonia, Laura, Frank, and Michael.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not going to get their last names messed up, but you can go on there, see, and really see that there's a lot of thought put into this to make sure it went well. But we really appreciate how much of that thought went into helping people with ALS, raising the money, raising the awareness. For anyone listening, though, you don't need to row across the Atlantic. We welcome you to do it, but you can find other ways to get involved. Go at alsphiladelphia.org. And just like George, if you put your mind to a goal, you could raise money, raise awareness, become an advocate, become a volunteer, become an ambassador for the cause. And again, alsphiladelphia.org. Find a walk to defeat ALS, ride to defeat ALS, or even just spread awareness through social media at ALS Philadelphia. So thanks, George, for all you did, and good luck in all the law schools you're going to go to.
Thank you.